the world. I'm actually very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation to share what I did at the World HRD Congress. As Nitin had mentioned, the way that I present is more practical rather than theory. And what I wanted to share with people when I was at the Congress was how I help my clients, usually or middle managers, how to cope with executive stress. And a lot of it has to do with the teams that they run. And a lot of the issues that they seem to be having is performance not being met or expectations of performance not being met. So I'll go through some statistics with you to help the left brainers, and we'll also interpret how that manifests itself for the right brainers amongst us. Okay. So for the session tonight, my mouse is not working. Oh, here we go. Okay, so I want to work through some research with you. I'll tell you a little bit about the clients that I work with so that you have a view in terms of the challenges that they face and the process. And this is a practical part of it where I will spend most of the presentation tonight. I'm looking to talk about 30 to 35 minutes and then leave the rest for question time. Okay, I think I'll be answering most of your questions that you have posted on the chat. The only thing that I won't be doing is going through the difference between a facilitator and a team coach session. So just a little bit about me. I've been working for over 30 years in different multinational organizations. So I've been lucky enough to have a breadth of experience so that I'm able to work through technology as well as financial services and marketing and campaign optimization. I've been lucky enough to work around the world where there are a lot of teams and cross-border team challenges that we all have to work through. Probably in the last 6 years, I've gone through to do certification in coaching. That kind of came out of the work that I did at HP as a part of the integration between EDS and HP services. That's just a little bit about me. I've been lucky enough also to be featured in marketing magazines. I write quite widely for Marketing Magazine, and I've also been incorporated into Human Resources Magazine as well. So I do a bit of work in relation to diversity, particularly in multinationals where Asians tend to be underrepresented in executive level management. I've also been part of a movie that's going to be released later this year around the September timeframe. Hopefully it will still get released with the COVID-19 going through, but we'll see what happens. It's basically following 3 clients on a 12-month journey in terms of trying to help them figure out what they want to do with their lives and to also transform their lives. So this has been a really exciting movie that I've been a part of, and hopefully it will be able to showcase a lot of other coaches around the world in terms of the work that they do with these 3 clients. I speak regularly at conferences and my topics vary between coaching, but also in terms of loyalty and marketing and employee and customer engagement. Okay, so that's just a little brief overview about myself. So let's have a look at the research. So the research in terms of all of this comes from 3 surveys that have been done in the last 3 years, from Harvard, obviously, from BCG, and from Deloitte. So for the left brainers amongst us, I think the thing that most people have to live with, and I think this came through from Mark Hurd when he took over as CEO of HP back in the early 2000s, is to do more with less. And I'm sure a lot of you have actually heard a lot of leaders say that. I think the thing here now is that what that means from a practical sense is that leaders now have to do everything. So let's just take an example. HR often gets their budgets cut. And what that then means is everything is put online and the manager basically has to do self-service. So you only have one HR business partner, which in today's terminology means that that person has to not only just service your business unit, but multiple business units as well, which means that from an admin perspective, the leader basically has to do everything themselves. Whereas historically, you had the support of a HR or a HR support person who would be able to do things like that for you. So from a statistical perspective, 33% of leaders and managers are overwhelmed by the level of stress that they have because they simply have to do everything. 61% move into executive roles that they're not prepared for. 52% of leaders and managers feel that they cannot detach from work. And that's a fact given that iPhones invented in the mid 2000s allow us now to be contactable, to be connected 24/7. And I know a lot of people, and some of us included, when we go on holidays, we just cannot resist the temptation to check email, or now that we have WhatsApp or WeChat, to go through and check messages. 7 in 10 business leaders are struggling with stress and managing the emotions in the workplace. So it's not just the workplace emotion that gets to leaders now, it's also the home front as well. You may have kids, you may have precocious teenagers, you may have newborns so that you can't get enough sleep. All of that becomes stressful, and sometimes some people take that out on the people that they work with in the office. We've all heard of the yeller, people that yell in the office, and a lot of the time that has a lot to do with their emotions that have been pent up, and everything just comes out when they just can't keep it in check anymore. So that's just for the left brainers. So how does that get represented? So you're feeling frustrated and often lacking motivation at work. So you're going to work, but only just going through the routines. So you're not really like trying to strive for a great piece of delivery. You're not motivated. When staff are not motivated, you tend to leave them alone and just say they'll figure it out. You usually have trouble sleeping. A lot of executives, because of the amount of work that they have to do, look at emails when they come home at night, because during the day, everybody wants a piece of them. And they sometimes only get 3 to 4 hours sleep a night, which can sometimes be troubling. I know I don't function without a minimum of 6 hours of sleep. So the next day, I'm extremely irritated and I'm very, very edgy. So I kind of need to get my 6 hours. And everybody's different. Some people can survive on 4, some people need 8. So it depends on the individual, but you need to listen to your body. The other way that it manifests itself is that leaders tend not to trust their employees. So you can't let go. And sometimes you can then come across as a micromanager, which is one of the things that employees do not like at all. So let's have a look at what teams feel. So some of the statistics around teams, 86% of employees cite the lack of collaboration or ineffective communication for workplace failures. The key to any high-performing team is clear and open communication. And 86% of them said that when there is no communication, collaboration is a major issue. 97% of employees believe that the lack of alignment between teams impacts the deliverables that they do or the outcome of the project. So again, the alignment requires communication and it requires management of expectations. 50% of millennials want experience and coaching to make them successful for their jobs and other endeavors. The thing that most people have found millennials is that they don't necessarily want to do the work. They don't necessarily want to have the 3 to 4 years in order to gain the experience. They want you to tell them, they want you to show them so that they can get the experience quickly and move on to that side piece of work that they're working on, which is basically a startup, which a lot of millennials are doing. So 37% of employees say that they like working with great team members, and that's their primary reason for staying. So, what's happened to the other 63% of employees? So, you have to wonder how teams are being formed, how they are performing, and how they're communicating and interacting with one another. So, from a practical perspective, what does this mean? Teams don't like to be micromanaged. Teams want not only to work together, but to learn together as well. And what that means is that the outcome should be aligned to the goals or the aspirations of the individual member that works on that team. Teams want to be trusted, and the thing that they sorely want is to have team members that are skilled. So you'll find a lot of teams feeling frustrated when there are team members that don't bring the skills to the table in order for them as a group to achieve their outcomes. Okay. All right. So let me tell you a little bit about the clients that I work with. I would say that probably 85% of the clients that I work with are leaders that have the do as I say, not as I do scenarios. So basically, they are telling employees what they have to do. And a lot of it also has to do with clients in organizations that don't have documented processes. So it's an unfortunate truth that many organizations may not be ISO compliant in terms of documentation, and they then take a lot of time in order to get things done and are waiting for the manager to tell them what are the next steps. So a lot of it is very directional. So rather than formal training or having documentation and letting the employee work through, and maybe even suggesting areas for improvement, because when we have a new set of eyes, it provides new perspective and new opportunity to become more efficient in processes. So the other thing that some of my clients go through and have issues with is that they don't allow the employees to come up with suggestions. They don't even have a suggestion box. And one of the reasons why they say that they don't do that is because they don't have the time. So as managers, they're struggling with having time to listen to suggestions for changes or improvement. And they struggle to try and carve out time to encourage creativity and innovation to make things better, because they are under pressure to not only manage the team, manage the outcome, but also to strategize, do their own work, and answer from above themselves. So that's kind of the typical client that I work with. So I've put down here a quote that I've got. With my clients, I've found that leaders need to move from telling their teams what to do to developing them through coaching. These leaders need to turn every interaction into a learning opportunity and foster learning, creativity, and innovation by developing their team's curiosity mindset. And the reason why I put that together is a lot of the clients that I've worked with need to be able to relieve the stress that they have. But in order to do that, they need to be able to trust their employees. They need to be able to get them to think about how to become more productive or more efficient, how to change or improve processes, how to digitize, how to be able to foster remote working, especially with COVID-19 going on now, and a lot of organizations from Facebook through to banks telling employees that you must now work from home for the next 30 days. So how can you trust them? A lot of Asian managers come from the, if I don't see you in the office, you can't possibly be working. So now that we've got these challenges, how do we trust the employees? How do we get them to be creative? How do we get them to be efficient so that I, as a manager, can delegate more work to them and get more things off my plate of work so that I can focus on the strategic planning as well as working with executive leaders in terms of what they're trying to do for organizational transformation. So that's the kind of work that I've been working with clients. And what I want to walk through now is how I actually do this. What is the actual processes that I've done in order to help my clients? So basically, I've integrated 5 processes or 5 techniques in order to get my clients to work through this. And you don't necessarily have to follow step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. You can come in at any point in time. It's dependent upon what the client wants from the coaching engagement, but also what they want to achieve, and the level of maturity of not only themselves, but also of their teams as well. So the first step that I do is basically work through with them in terms of acceptance. Either acceptance that their team is not performing well, or they themselves have challenges or need changes to the way they lead in order to motivate their employees and teams. So the acceptance part is really important. Sometimes I don't have to work a lot on that part because some leaders or some managers that I work with are very switched on, and they already have a view of their own self-actualization in terms of where they're at in terms of acceptance of limitations of themselves or expectations not being met by their teams. Once we've done that, I try to figure out what are the strengths that the individual has in terms of the leader and figure out how that shows itself up so as to give the manager confidence, but also ultimately to work with the leader or manager to try and work on their trust issues with teams. Once we've gone through that process and the leader has worked through and done the hard work in terms of working through and understanding their strengths and how it manifests in their day-to-day, I get the leaders to figure out who are their star performers in their teams. A lot of organizations have budgetary constraints, but they also have processes that they go through. So depending on the organization, this gets limited. So that's the reason why I get the leader to figure out who are their top performers, and then we get their top performers to also do strengths assessments as well. And I do the Gallup Clifton Strengths Finder, the Clifton Strengths 34, for both the individual leader and manager as well as team members that have been identified as the star performers. So once we get that, we work through with the teams as well to help them understand their strengths. Same thing again in terms of how those strengths are represented on their day-to-day work that they do. How does it manifest itself? How does it show itself? So once we've done that, we have a common language or a common understanding in terms of the team's strengths. So once we've done that, we let them figure out, okay, on a day-to-day level, what's working, what's not working, what can be improved, or what needs a decision by the leader. And we do that through a reflections journal. So I know a lot of people currently do journaling, but there are a lot of managers, particularly males, that just refuse to journal. And a lot of them have said that's a girl's thing. I know it's very, very old-fashioned way of thinking, but the way that I explain it to them is that don't call it a journal, call it a reflection. And the thing here is that you want to be able to purge your mind at the end of each day so as to relieve the stress that you're feeling. So write it down, what's working well so that you can continue replicating, what's not working well so that you can go through and improve it. and what needs to be changed, what I, as a leader, need to change. So that enables them to be able to get things out of their head so as to relieve the stress and to start thinking about how we can continue doing the great things we do and how we as a team can sit down together and figure out how to resolve the issues that may not be working so well. So once we've completed that, and that journal they can do on a daily basis, I've got a form that I get them to fill out and they just photocopy it and use it, or they put it onto Microsoft Word and they just type into it as their journal. So then what we try to do after that is, how do people perceive the team and how does the team perceive the leader? So I use the extended assessment for that. I find extended DISC is quite good because it's not only about how you perceive yourself, but how other people know. And again, it's the same thing. In order to engender better collaboration, not only within the team, but with teams with outside the core team members itself. So if you need to work with other people outside the core team, not on a continual basis, but maybe on a one-off in order to get the team project done, then it also enables the team to understand how people perceive them as a group together as well. And then the other thing that we also do is, and we do this after the first 90 days, is the 360 feedback for both the team as well as the individual leader or manager. So that's super important as well, because a lot of people know that there is no growth if you don't get feedback. So we try to ensure that everybody is having an open mind in order to receive the feedback so that they can address or identify areas for improvement. And one of the things that I always point out is that they should always be open, because the person giving the feedback is taking a lot of courage in order to provide that feedback, because as humans, sometimes we just want to be liked and we don't necessarily want to upset the person who is asking for the feedback. So it's always super important to acknowledge that the person is taking a lot of courage in order to give it to you. So that's just a general overview of the process that I actually take with my clients. So what I want to do now is to walk through with you how I actually do it very quickly. So for those of you that know points of view, they are cards. I'm not sure whether you can see them, but they're cards that you can use in order to help people have a look at themselves, but also to take an opportunity to think about what's happened in the past, what's currently happening, and how can I improve it. So what we do first is a team version. So we do this with the individual leader first, and then we do it with the team. So when I have my first one-on-one with a client, I start with their team first, because that's usually where most of the performance anxieties and the stress levels come from. So what I get them to do is to pick 3 cards, and the cards are used to help them get new perspectives or to look at things differently. But the 3 areas that they look at are what happened in the past with their team, what is currently happening with their team, and what is the potential of the team. And once they pick up their card, and I'll just use these as examples. So these cards have pain for what's happening in the past, difficulty, what is currently happening in your team, and success in terms of what is the potential of your team. These were just randomly selected. They could be anything that could help elicit a thought or a deeper perspective from the leader. So this is important because then we understand what is their understanding of their teams in terms of why they're not performing, or where some of the issues potentially could be, and what the leader could possibly do in order to try and close that gap in terms of the potential for the team. So that's the first step that I take. Then we go through and do a second one with the leader, but this time specifically on their leadership capability. So again, I get them to pick 2 picture cards, but then I ask them to pick a third card, but this third card is a question to help them bridge the gap. So the first picture card is to help them think about what is an ideal leader. So in their mind, what is the ideal leader and what are they trying to become or emulate? The second card is what is their reality? So right now as a leader, what is their reality as a leader? Are they a micromanager? Do they trust their employees? Do they have empathy for what the teams are going through? So what is their actual leadership style like right now? Then the third card that they pick up is a question card, and that allows them to think about how they can bridge the gap between what they think is ideal and what their reality is. So this is what it looks like. So their ideal leader, they can answer that question based on the other card. Their reality,
See calcium.
their reality can be reflected by the card which is stuck, and they can tell me what are the issues that they have as a leader that they're stuck in. So that usually is a very good card if the leader picks that card up. And then how can they bridge the gap between their leader and their reality? And the question to help them with bridging the gap is, what am I not seeing? And if the leader is lucky enough to pick up their card, one of my clients actually did pick up this card, and he actually went and said, actually, I've never done a 360 before, so I don't know what others think of me. And I haven't received any feedback because employees don't tell me or are not honest enough to let me know in terms of peers. But sometimes some people are just afraid to let me know. So that's a telling thing. And that's also from a coach's perspective, it allows you an opportunity to upsell if you have not sold a 360 into this engagement. Okay, so once we've done the leader, then we go back into his team and then we do the same team question for the teams. So as a team, what's happened with the team in the past? What's currently happening as a team? And do you think the team has any potential in order to be successful? Or what are the issues that are preventing them from reaching their full potential? So we do that as a team and we work through and workshop what the team thinks and feels they need to improve on, and then what action they're going to take in order to try and close off those gaps. So as a coach, you kind of move a little bit towards facilitation in this part, but it's not the full facilitation because you're still asking questions of the team. You're asking the question of what are you going to do to close the gap? How are you going to close the gap? When are you going to close the gap? And that's asking the team to come back together in order to work that through. Okay. So once we've done that, the second phase or step 2 that I have done is to work with the leader taking the Gallup Strengths 34 assessment. So how can he build up his team? He needs to know his strengths first. And despite what some people have said, I do find Gallup useful in terms of identifying shortfalls and how those shortfalls can be made up for by the team. Because if you know what you're missing, you can form a team or hire somebody in order to help you close some of those gaps. And that's what a good leader does. A good leader knows what are the strengths and weaknesses of their team and knows how to plug those gaps. It's something that that is a learned skill. I have found that especially for Asian managers, that because of the losing face phenomenon, that they don't want to be wrong. They always have to be right or seen to be right. So having flaws or not having a good strength could be seen as losing face. So once we've done their individual and figured out what are their strengths and their lesser talents rather than calling them weaknesses, I get the leader to select their high potentials or their star achievers on their teams. And we get them to also do the Gallup Strengths Assessment. And once we've done that, we plot them onto the team grid. Then we know where the team's strengths lie. And sometimes, as we mentioned before, that there are some team members on a team that are sometimes resentful or sometimes unhappy that there are people that don't have the strengths or skills in order to pull their weight on the team in order to get their project done. And sometimes this team grid can help identify. I know the philosophy is not to use the team grid in order to fill weaknesses, but sometimes through human emotion or through just human inquisitiveness, that they want to find what's missing so that they can try and plug the holes. You don't necessarily have to hire somebody in order to plug the holes, but we take the Clifton Strengths methodology and try and find what are some of the strengths that somebody has or a combination of strengths in order to plug the holes. And that's the way to use the Clifton Strengths Finder. So the step 4 that I take is using extended DISC. So this is a little bit extra from the standard DISC assessment that we have. So we take the assessment 30 days after we have got the team up and running and they've done their initial assessments, so that they should be going back to work, working through how that they can become a better team. All of that work that we did in steps 1 and 2, they should already be working on now. 30 days after that, then we come through and do the extended DISC. And this is where we try and see how they perceive themselves, but also how others perceive them as well. So we do this in order to foster better collaboration and to also identify where behavioral change is needed. And again, we use the plotted spider graph in order to plot where all the team members are and what are some of the potential holes in terms of the team from outside of the team. So it's not just the team looking at themselves, it's people outside of the team looking in as well. So once we've done that, usually 90 days after the 90-day mark, we do a 360 assessment. So depending on the engagement that you have, I've been lucky enough to 9-month engagements so that we can do at least 360 feedback cycles. But some just 4 months. So literally at the 90-day, we do the assessment and then we go through and give the feedback on the assessment and then the engagement ends. So it really depends on the client. So I use the Marshall Goldsmith 360 feedback tool. I find that actually very useful. The reports that come out of it is really good. So I don't have to go through and play around with graphs and things like that. It's all pre-done for you. So what we want to do here is to have the team look at how others view them, to accept the responses. They need to have an open mind in order to do that, and try and find out what are the root causes of team performances not being well done, or root cause of why they're not accepting more work that's being delegated down by the managers. So try and identify the root cause and then implement the actions in order to alleviate the pressure points on the team, but also allow the leader of that team to be able to delegate some work down so that they can offload some of their work to them as well. So a lot of this has to do with conversations around stretch assignments, conversations around career development, and especially for the hypos, how they can showcase their capabilities so that they can be considered for promotions or other job opportunities in order to grow their breadth of experience. So we find the 360 quite useful for that because it is feedback not only from subordinates, but also from peers and people above, and sometimes maybe also from external parties within the organization. And that's all I wanted to go through. We're at the 40-minute mark already. I wanted to leave time for everyone to ask questions. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free by all means to ask.
Okay, guys, so you can either unmute yourself or raise your hand, or you can type in your questions on the chat box and I'll read it for you. Any questions that you may have for Kevin? So while the questions come in, Kevin, I had one question that I posted. You know, I try to use this reflection, daily reflection with some of my clients. And what I've seen is that the success rate of them actually writing their reflections on a journal, for me, it has been like 15 or 20%, not more than that. Is there a, is that how you see as well, or is there something different or unique that you do to increase that success rate?
Okay, so when I stop working with a client and then I go back maybe 6 months or 9 months later and just do a quick checkup, how are you going? Since we've stopped our coaching relationship, they've all stopped doing the journals. Okay, so I think the thing is, I find that they do the journals whilst they're in coaching, but once they've stopped the coaching relationship, they all go back to their habits. And I think a lot of it has to do with actually taking the time to do it. So everybody's busy, and because they don't have a coach nagging them after the coaching relationship has ended, they just don't do it. So I think a lot of it has to do with discipline, but also you don't necessarily have to do it at the end of the night. You could do it before you leave to go home. Like I don't know about some people, but some of my clients, they sit down with their assistant to say, these are the things I need you to schedule. These are the things you need to change for tomorrow. And then once they've done that, some of my clients have been disciplined whilst they're under coaching to actually do their journal before they walk out of the office. So it's a way of also talking to the client to ask them, when do you think is the best time for you to do this self-reflection? So I try not to use the word journal because some guys still have a fixation with journaling, but I just call it a reflection sheet. And they will figure out when is a good time to do it. But unfortunately, once they're out of the coaching relationship, I would say 90% of them had stopped.
Yeah, I've even faced problems during the coaching itself. You know, primarily because I don't go after them. Did you do that or not? If they did, fine. If they did not do, that is also fine. I would ask them what happened, but you know, over a period of time, I've seen very few clients actually follow through on writing the reflections on a daily basis.
Yeah. So the thing is, like, I give them a PDF file, but I also give them a soft copy in Word format because some I've some don't like writing, and sometimes their handwriting is like, oh my god, it's worse than the doctor's handwriting. But some like doing it, especially when they're on a plane. They just whip out their laptop or their iPad and then they just type in the document. So again, it's the same thing. When you start up the relationship with the client and when they agree to be held accountable for it, then you agree with them, when are you going to do it? You find out what's the best time for them to do it. And then you ask them, how are you going to do it? Are you going to physically write it, or are you going to type it? What works for you?
Okay, thanks. Open to people. You have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, hi, Kevin. This is Melvin here.
Hi, Melvin.
First and foremost, thank you for having this wonderful session on coaching. And it was quite interesting to hear your different model that you presented. The question which I wanted to ask you is, when it comes to stress and the team, a certain aspect of stress is related to the expectations that the higher management has on the teams. Now, the leader is in between delivering on those expectations and managing the potential of his team. Now, you did mention about high potential players, but
yeah,
how do you manage, how do you leverage the expectation with the potential of the team? Is there something to do there, or do you work on how you can stretch your team to get the maximum out of them? But then again, there is stress involved. So which kind of stress and how much stress can a team tolerate?
So I think the thing here is that the do more with less motto has actually meant that it's not only just the managers that have work that are on top of what they normally have to do, but you'll also have the employees or the team members that are doing work that are not part of their job description. So some of those would automatically fall into the hypo area already in terms of categorized as high potentials. But I think the thing here is that those high potentials sometimes can do more because some of them are hungry for experience as well as being able to showcase their capability. And those managers that are good in terms of promoting the star performers, in terms of public recognitions or having the conversation at bonus or salary review time and flagging them and recommending them, I think those employees will find it less stressful because they have more opportunities for recognitions and rewards. So there's kind of a reward for the stress that they have in terms of being stretched or given more opportunities. The ones that are not necessarily on the hypo area, those are the ones that are probably going to have motivational issues in terms of delivering. One, because of jealousy, because sometimes they see the high potentials getting favorable treatment in their eyes, which may not be true, but as humans, sometimes we make things up or we see things that are not there. But also sometimes I think that category of employee may feel overwhelmed in terms of having more work than what their job description actually says. But I think as an organization, and not specifically that leader, as an organization where they have already told employees to do more with less, it's an opportunity to have a conversation with each of them individually to say, hey, look, times have changed, especially during the recession. So for those of you that are old enough to remember the first SARS and then the global financial crisis in the 2000s, those were the time periods where executive management, the C-levels, the C-suites, all made huge retrenchments, and everybody that was left actually had more work to do. So sometimes it's not a case of one-to-one conversations, because in those cases, it was across the board. Everybody had to do more work because they was doing more with less. I think after the SARS round of cuts, when the global financial crisis happened in 2008 and 2009, I think people got smarter to say, we can't keep on cutting. If you want us to cut, we have to let things go. So I think by involving the team members, especially the ones that are not in the hypo, to say, hey, look, we have to do more with less, but also what could we stop doing? And sometimes some of those team members could be doing work that other divisions or other departments should actually own. And a lot of streamlining, productivity, and efficiency was brought about by putting work back where they normally belong. And that sometimes can help alleviate the stress. And because you've involved the team members to try and identify areas where they can stop work or move work back to the rightful owners, that can also motivate them as well and try and relieve the stress on their level. Does that help?
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay.
Okay. Another question?
Hi, Kevin. This is Mani. I have a question. Thanks for doing this. Nowadays, there is a lot of conversation about team coaching, and there is Team Coaching International, as well as there is Global Institute of Team Coaching happening. How do you compare what you're doing with respect to leader and team separately with that kind of a coaching model? Thank you.
I think it's an evolution going through. So if you look at the way coaching has started, where it started at the C level, right? So everybody thinks about executive coaching at the C level. And then probably in 2010 to 2015, that started to move down to middle management, right? So I'm not talking about VP level, I'm talking senior manager, director levels. So on a global context, that had already moved down to that level, to the high potentials. So you have organizations like IBM, HP, even American Express, Chase Manhattan, Citibank, spending $25,000 for 6 months engagements for those levels. So I think it's an evolution. I think as the coaching has come down to the middle management level or the high potential level, it was a natural progression to move into the team coaching space because of the do more with less motto and organizations still being hierarchical. You had to collaborate across the organizations in order to get things done. And then when project timelines were missed or teams were arguing with one another or team members that couldn't get along, I think it just naturally moves from the coaching of individuals to coaching as a team. How can we as an individual, how can we as a team work together and collaborate together? And I think a lot of it has to do with the philosophy also of let's not just point fingers. It's like, let's resolve this together because more heads together are better than one head. And I think that's the evolution in terms of how we've got to team coaching, which is quite popular these days. You'll see some tenders coming out from the large organizations and also government institutions asking for team coaching as well in order to ensure collaboration, high performance. And the other thing that is super big right now and the reason for team coaching is trust. Especially cross-border teams, when some team members are nighttime, other team members are their daytime, so that those people who are nighttime, when they wake up the next morning, they're expecting that the team members, which were their daytime, have completed their work so that when they wake up, they can carry on with the project. So that's one of the big things in terms of trusting your team members will do what they say that they will do. And that's what I'm seeing in terms of the evolution of team coaching.
Thank you.
Hi, Kevin. This is Sagar. I just had a question around what are some of the tools that can be used for team coaching effectively? Looking at the current situation, there will be a lot of coaches who will be using this tool to probably do team coaching. So any particular tool that you recommend and how can it be made more effective?
Okay, so you can practically use any tool. It's a question of cost and it's also a question of fit as well. So whilst a leader might say yes to everything, the HR may come in to say, sorry, we don't use Clifton Strengths. We use Hogan assessment as an example, or we use Harrison as an example. So it's dependent upon the organization. So when you are talking about, or when you're preparing a proposal, what your methodology is in terms of how you're going to approach the engagement, you need to have that conversation with the leader and HR together. So I made the mistake very early on by dealing directly with the leader, and then the leader says, I need to go talk to HR. So then that just got muddled and got turned inside out because the HR says, we don't use those. Like at a corporate level, we use these assessments. So that's one lesson to learn from my perspective. I think as almost as an icebreaker, before you go into the psychometric assessments, I found points of view or even the Lego play quite useful in terms of getting teams together so that they can do something that is a little bit more creative. Points of view for their phototherapy, Lego play in terms of creative. I think those are useful in terms of breaking the ice with the teams. It's not team building, so we're not running out and going into outward bound, but it's to work on an assignment, work on representation. So tell me how this team is performing. Where do you think are the bottlenecks? Where do you think decisions are not made? What support do you need? What support are you not getting? So I think using Lego play or points of view, that allows them to break the ice and start getting things out. Depending on the organization, that may be all you need. I worked with Avaya last month, and they didn't need to go through psychometric assessments because we used the points of view cards, and they had figured out what they needed to complete in order to get the team to be cohesive for the new fiscal year. So it really depends on the organization. There's no, like, this tool will work for this situation or that situation. It really depends on the individuals and also the corporate policies that in terms of what we can and cannot use.
So Kevin, there is a question from Revis. She's asking, how is diversity managed in team coaching, and diversity across different dimensions, not just gender or race?
Okay, it's funny you should say that, because another engagement that I had was about ageism, which is a major problem in a lot of countries these days. So because of Mr. Trump being nationalistic, a lot of organizations have now closed borders. So it's very difficult to get work visas, which means that you're left with the pool of talent within the country itself. So unfortunately, in a lot of countries, Australia included, Japan in particular, South Korea, and a lot of Asian countries, the population is rapidly aging, which means that some of the skill sets that are required are not there. So diversity in terms of ageism is a massive problem right now. So there is a lot of re-employment issues with the older workers. So we're seeing redeployment of people in the mid to late 40s and above more difficult in terms of working in a team. And that's where a lot of the concerns with the right skill sets because of their age. So that's one area that is quite big. The other one that is, sorry?
No, go ahead. Well, the question was, how do you manage this? You know, understanding that the age is an issue, how do you manage this diversity in a team, knowing that this is the team?
Okay, so what we do in the team sessions, again, using either the Lego Serious Play or the points of view cards, right? We identify what are the diversity issues. So ageism is one of the big ones that keep on coming out. So once we've got that, then the next set of exercise that we do, whether it's Lego Serious Play or with points of view, is what can be done, right? And we kind of need to make sure that what is said in that room specifically for this exercise stays in that room, because sometimes it is controversial, sometimes it goes against organizational policy. So we need to make sure that that specific section is a very safe environment. And the reason for that is because there are sensitivities in terms of retraining for the older workers, or it could be working mothers as an example. Or it could be working fathers, part-time works, or it could be disabled, because there are some office buildings that are not catered for disabled workers. So the question is, what can the organization do, right? So sometimes, as an example, the office space doesn't have handles in the pantry or in the toilets and things like that. What can be done? So sometimes the organization can't do things because of building code regulations and things like that, depending on the age of the building. So sometimes the hard decision needs to be made because of the physicality of the building. Sometimes they can't hire in certain areas. So that's why it's important to have the team brainstorm what are some of the solutions, but it also needs to be practical as well. But the practicality part of it needs to be in a very safe environment. I've had one instance where that has happened. And unfortunately, like HR also came to the same conclusion, like, look, the landlord won't allow us to do that and things like that, which meant that when the office lease was up, they were moving offices so that they could cater for potential disabled employees. That's just one example that I've worked through.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. We are on top of the hour. If Kevin, you allow, I'll probably take one last question.
Sure.
So anybody has the last question for Kevin? Please shoot. Otherwise, we'll close. Okay, I guess there's no more question. So you've done a fantastic job, Kevin. I guess everybody has understood what you've talked about. But sincerely, a very practical session, understanding of what tools and how they can be used. If somebody needs to reach you out, is there a way they can reach you out, Kevin?
I've just put back up my my contact details. There is a QR code there that goes directly to my LinkedIn. So you can reach me on LinkedIn. My email is there as well, and I'm on the 3 social media platforms. So you can follow me on
guys.
Twitter.
So in case you need to reach out, Kevin, please note down the details and feel free to reach him out. People who are asking me for CCUs, I have not yet applied for CCUs for this session, but I will, and hopefully I will get that as well, and I will circulate it around to each one of you based on how long you have been there on this session. Again, thanks a lot, Kevin, and thanks a lot everybody for joining in. You are the people who make these sessions successful. Thanks a lot. I will stop the recording now.
Thank you. Thank you.